I was on the way to school like always, but as I reached the school gate, I saw police cars everywhere. They were surrounding the whole school. As soon as the professor entered the hall, he called my name. Sam? Where is Sam? My college account had been attacked more than 100 times. The situation that had started as my private search had blown up to an official investigation. Today's story shows the strength of simple and stupid ideas we make, and the powerful life lesson almost nobody talks about. So guys, stay with me until the very end, because what happens there is something rare, unexpected, and might just change the way you'll look at choices forever. But before our chilling story begins, smash that thumbs up button and leave a comment telling me if you like these types of stories. Now get your snacks ready and let's begin our story. The hero of our story says, "My name is Sam, a 16-year-old at high school. I lived with my small family, my parents, and my younger sister. We weren't rich by any means. We were just a middle-class family. I was passionate about computers, not just video games like most teenagers, but programming and understanding how hacking worked and how to secure a system from hacks. The story started on a normal day at school, and I was sitting at the back of my IT classroom with my friend Jerry beside me. IT was my favorite subject, but at the same time, it felt very boring to me. The teacher was talking about IP addresses, basic networks, and things that are like a piece of cake to me. And I already knew this stuff. I had been teaching myself about computers for years. I didn't learn just from school, but from books, online tutorials, and forums. Forums where programmers explained things to each other. At night, where other kids were playing video games, I would sit with my laptop and test codes. I wasn't a hacker. I didn't want to steal money or break things. For me, it was more like solving puzzles. That day, I was sitting in class and the boredom showed on my face. My eyes were sliding over the worksheet like they were made of stone. I tapped my pencil against the desk just to stay awake. That's when Jerry leaned closer and whispered, "Sam, let's do something fun." I didn't look at him and I said, "Like what?" He said, "Let's do a prank. We're already in the computer lab. What if you send out a fake message from the school system telling everyone that tomorrow's a holiday?" I asked how. He said, "Hack the school system." That single word made my pulse skip. Hack? I whispered back, raising an eyebrow. Honestly, at first I thought he was joking, but then I looked at the school's Wi-Fi. The whole class was connected to it. Even the teacher was using it to share assignments. The school system was in front of me. It felt too easy, like an unlocked door. My heart kicks. Not from fear, but from the electric jolt of possibility. I leaned back at my chair, pretended to think. I knew I could do it. The school systems were not that hard to access. They were old. No security cameras, no advanced firewalls, just basic protections I had already studied online. This idea was stupid, reckless, but the thought of pulling it off gave me a rush that I couldn't shake. I opened a window in my computer, tapped a few keys, and navigated through the school's internal system. To explain it simply, just imagine the school system like a hallway with locked doors. Each door led to a room with information, grades, emails, attendance records. Normally, only teachers had keys, but sometimes, if you pushed gently, you would find a door that wasn't fully locked. And that's what I was looking for. And within a few minutes, I found one. I created a simple message that looked official. It was short and clear, like something a principal might send. And here is what I wrote. Dear parents and guardians, please be advised that tomorrow the school will be closed for an unexpected staff in service. No students are expected on campus. Thank you for your understanding. School administration. I didn't show Jerry the words. I just hit send and leaned back in my chair, and my face stayed calm. The system did the rest, sending it to every parent on the mailing system. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, half nervous, half excited, until my father told me that tomorrow was off, and I pretended to be surprised. The next morning, almost no students came to school, because their parents had believed the message. Inside, I felt both proud and guilty. The next day, meaning the day after this holiday I made, everything was normal. I was sitting in class, typing an assignment. That's when the supervisor came in and said in an angry tone, "Where is Sam?" My stomach tightened. I tried to act cool, but my hands were sweaty. So I walked with him, and as we were in the hallway, I asked him, "Why did you call me, sir?" He replied, "The principal wants to see you." The principal's office was simple. Wooden desk, shelves of dusty files, and a bowl of candy that looked untouched. He looked at me seriously. He said, "Sam, we had an issue yesterday. Someone sent out a message to all parents from the school system, saying school was closed, and this caused a lot of confusion." I froze as he stared at me with a shameful face. There were no cameras in school. No one saw me. How did they know about that? Then I suddenly remembered Jerry was the only one to know about that. In fact, it was his idea, so maybe he told the principal. The principal came closer to me and said, "How did you do it?" I tried to deny at first, but he was pretty sure that I was the one who did it. So I panicked and said, "It was Jerry's idea." My voice was small. The principal sighed and said, "Both of you will get a warning. This could have been more serious." I nodded, ashamed. Relief mixed with guilt. I thought the worst part was over, but the next day changed everything. I was on the way to school like always, but as I reached the school gate, I saw police cars everywhere. They were surrounding the whole school. Officers stood at the entrances, and other cops were spread inside the school. The air felt heavy, and kids were whispering in clusters. I entered my class confused. Soon after, I got more suspicious about what's going on and why the cops were here. So I asked for permission to go use the restroom. But I actually wanted to see what's going on outside. As I was walking and looking at the cops, I bumped into the principal. And he said, "Sam, what are you doing here?" I replied I wanted to use the restroom. Basically, he knew I was lying and said, "You want to see what's going on outside, aren't you?" But I still denied and said, "No, sir. I'm really going to use the restroom." Then he said, "Okay, you can go. But when you're done, I need you in my office." I said, "Okay." I got confused and whispered to myself, "Why does he want me?" So I went to the restroom, pretended to wash my hands, and then headed straight to the principal's office. This time, his face was pale, and he said, "Sam, last night someone broke into the school. All the machines in the computer lab are gone. Even the air conditioners were stolen. It's a huge loss." I sat in shock and said, "What?" He nodded. "We called the police and they're investigating and interrogating everyone in the school." He also said, "As you know, it's my responsibility if we didn't know who the thieves were. But the thing is, In this school, we don't have any security cameras. That's why I want to ask you something. You're a smart boy and good with computers. So, if you notice something or suspect anyone in your class, tell me as soon as possible. And if you help me find the thieves, I'll recommend you to the best university in the country when you graduate, so that you can study the field that you're good at. And he meant IT. After hearing that, I was at a loss for words. And I said, alright, I'll try my best to help you find the thieves. I kept turning over what the principal said in my head, and I really needed his recommendation to be accepted in the university, especially since my grades were low. On my way home after school, I walked a slightly different route, the kind you take when your brain is trying to solve a puzzle. As I passed the row of houses across from the school, I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. A set of small dome security cameras fixed under the eaves of a rental house 2 doors down. They pointed straight at the street and the sidewalk in front of the school. The next morning, I told the principal my plan and exactly what I had seen. He straightened in his chair, surprised but cautious, and said, "Let's go ask the landlord of that house if the school could view the recordings of his security cameras." I led him to the house and we knocked the door, but an old man opened and we explained everything to him, and that his security cameras recordings could help us find the thieves. But unfortunately, he had refused. He didn't want to get involved unless there was a legal order. That made sense. Property rights and privacy are real concerns. But it left us stuck. I'll be honest, I had ideas in my head that would have been quick and dirty, and involved hacking into the landlord's network so I can download the camera's recording. But the principal made something very clear. If I wanted to solve this and keep my future, I had to be methodical and above board. So I changed my angle. Instead of trying to force access anywhere, I looked at the problem in public ways that didn't break laws. I started to plan in my head and said to myself, it didn't make sense that someone would risk breaking in and then be sloppy about reselling the gear. Stolen items almost always had to move somewhere. They don't just disappear. If someone wanted to sell expensive school equipment fast, they usually chose places where buyers didn't ask too many questions, like local social media groups or hidden marketplaces or short-lived throwaway accounts, which are disposable accounts and emails created for temporary use only. Sam says I started searching for the listings. I dove into online marketplaces and local selling groups carefully, and I paid attention to specific things: the language people used in descriptions, the timestamps of posts, the types of photos uploaded. As I was scrolling through posts and listings, one thing stuck out. Several posts had photos that at first glance looked generic. These photos had monitors and computers that were the same used in our school. I know that you're saying right now that this is not a strong evidence that those computers were the ones stolen from the school. But that's until one picture stopped me. This picture, like other pictures, had a monitor and a computer case in it. But at the back of this monitor, there was a small manufacturer sticker, the kind that usually gets cropped out. But here's the thing. In the corner of the photo, near the power socket, was a tiny scuff on the wall. The same scuff I had seen in another listing a week earlier. Now those were tiny clues, but they all lined up. Anyone who resells lots of identical machines will reuse the same photos or slightly edited versions. But those nearly identical pictures I saw were posted under different usernames. That told me that was the same seller using different throwaway temporary accounts, or a circle of sellers working together as a team, and was moving gears in pieces. So I mapped the posting pattern. One account posted late at night and only in the small hours. Another popped up in the mornings with the same set of pictures, but a slightly different price. The usernames were throwaway accounts. There was no history, no feedbacks. What made me confident was the combination of the photo details, the timing, and how quickly the posting would vanish after a few hours. That suggested that someone was posting and then taking the listing down fast, likely to avoid being tracked. As I kept scrolling, my eyes caught something even stranger. I saw a listing with a photo taken in the same angle and the exact same scarf on the wall as all previous listings. But this specific listing showed a faint mark on the side of the computer case. My stomach tightened. That mark looked familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. Then I remembered months ago when I used to sit late in the computer lab at school. I had boredly scratched a tiny line into the metal next to the power button of the exact same machine I always used in school. It was a stupid little habit I usually did because of boredom. Sam says I stopped and went back comparing the pictures slowly, just like a detective. The scarf, the sticker, and the tiny scratch. They matched perfectly with the notes in my head about our lab inventory. I felt my pulse speed up. This wasn't a coincidence. I was suddenly 100% sure that these accounts and these listings were selling our school's machines. Those accounts weren't innocent. They were the thieves. My hands shook slightly as I closed my laptop and grabbed the phone. I didn't act alone. I took screenshots and headed the next day to the principal's office. I presented the evidence and the pattern I'd found. Duplicate images, matching scuffs on screens, old posting times, the scratch mark, and most importantly, the locations that these accounts were referencing in their listings. We told everything to the cops and they took it seriously. And it's obvious because all the coins lined up. And this looked like an organized resale operation. Instead of asking the landlord directly for the recordings, something he'd refused, the police made the legal move. They asked for cooperation from local property owners, and when needed, obtained the proper authorizations. They also agreed to handle the risky part, which is contacting the seller and arranging a controlled purchase. We discussed having an undercover officer pose as a buyer to meet the seller in public. And on the day agreed on to meet the seller, I felt my chest tight. We waited and watched at a distance while the undercover officer met the seller. It played out like a quiet scene from a procedural show. The seller arrived and someone else drove the car. And so the officers moved in. When they arrested the group and brought the equipment back, the look on the principal's face was something I'll never forget. He shook my hand and there was an honest gratitude there. He was relieved that the school could teach again without missing its machines. After the recovery, we tested the hardwares, matched serial numbers and scuff patterns to our inventory list. And that final step was simple, old-fashioned bookkeeping. And it was what really proved that these items belonged to the school. And the police thanked me for bringing the pattern to them. Instead of trying to act alone, I felt a rush of pride that wasn't showy. The kind you get when something difficult works because you did it the right way. At graduation, the principal kept his word and recommended me for a scholarship. He told the admissions team about the way I had worked. Patient, careful, legal, and so on and so on. That recommendation opened doors at university, where I dove deeper into programming, cybersecurity, and databases. For the ones who don't know, cybersecurity is protecting systems from attacks. And databases are like digital cabinets that store information online. I spent time on forums, reading, asking questions, and learning from others. I practiced by creating my own secure small systems and testing how secure they were. In fact, I reached a stage where the university's lectures were like a piece of cake. One day, I was working on a project that took 2 weeks of hard work and effort, and I gave it a lot of time to perfect it. 2 nights before the submission's deadline, I had been working in the lab until dawn, soldering the last bugs out and running my final tests on the project. I fell asleep on the desk while the screen was still glowing. When I woke up, my neck hurt and the sun was already high. I packed my thing, confident I had done everything I needed to, and headed to attend my lecture. I was sitting next to my colleague, Troy, the guy who I usually traded ideas with. I told him about the project and the effort I put into it. And I also told him that I will submit it today before midnight. And that's after I made the last tests and make sure everything was alright and working well. He nodded and smiled, and he knew I cared a lot about detail. 2 days later was presentation day. I walked into the lecture hall and sat in the mass of students waiting to show their work. I felt nervous but also proud. I had stayed up for nights working on that project. As soon as the professor entered the hall, he called my name. Sam? Where is Sam? I raised my hand confidently, thinking he saw my project and liked. My heart was steady. But then, he said something I couldn't have imagined. He said, Sam, your project failed submission rules. The whole room went cold for a second. I tried to process it. What? I asked in a shock. I kept whispering to myself. Why? And what happened? After class, I followed the professor down the hallway and asked him why I had failed. He looked at me with tired eyes and said, there was a student who submitted the exact same project with the same files and same content. We have timestamps, and it was locked before your upload, meaning that student submitted the same project before you, Sam. I felt my throat close. I said, but I worked on it for weeks. I even slept in the lab. I know everything in this project, I swear. It's mine. The professor raised an eyebrow and said, if there's proof of original work, show me. But academic rules are strict. For now, it's plagiarism. He then said, Sam, look, if someone else uploaded your project before you, it would be considered his. So I cannot do anything about it, sorry. I left numb. It was not just about grades. It was about trust and reputation. I needed to know how that other submission had appeared earlier than mine. Who had my project and how did they get it? Had someone stole my files from the laptop while I slept in the lab? I was shocked. How could someone else turn in my work before I even uploaded it? I asked the professor to check the logs and see who did it, but he ignored me. I couldn't sit still while my future was at risk. I needed to know who had taken my projects. So that night, I sneaked quietly into the university's IT department, where there was server logs and computers. I wasn't trying to harm the system. I just wanted answers. I knew where the public access logs were kept. Public access logs are the basic records that showed me who uploaded what and when. I didn't touch anything that could break things. I just wanted to see the timestamps and the IP addresses to know who uploaded my project to the professor before me. But what I saw made my stomach drop. My college account had been attacked more than 100 times. Someone tried to log into my account using different passwords again and again until one attempt finally succeeded. And all of those attempts came from inside the campus. And that proved one thing. Whoever uploaded my project first was here somewhere in the university. But that wasn't the scariest part. While digging, I discovered something worse. Many other student accounts had also been targeted. Their personal data had leaked, and parts of it was already exposed outside the university for a short time. And someone took advantage of that moment. The system was bleeding information, so I tried to fix what I could in that quiet hour. Closing obvious holes, making notes of timestamps, saving screenshots. I thought I was helping. I didn't know how it would look to others until a security guard found me. And before I could explain, he had called the university security office. They came over, asked some questions, and then called the police. The situation that had started as my private search had blown up to an official investigation. The interrogation was the worst part. I sat in a small room under white lights and told the officers everything. I explained how I had been working on the project in the lab and how I had checked the logs. They listened, sometimes taking notes, sometimes looking at me like I might be lying. At one point, they asked me why I had been in the IT area late. I simply said I wanted to prove that the project was mine. I didn't know who else to trust. I had offered to take them to the logs room and show them what I had found. They agreed, walking back through the quiet corridors with security and officers felt weird. When we reached the logs room, I showed them all the records I had saved. Login attempts, timestamps, the source addresses. I let them read everything. They took the evidence seriously, and the university's IT head came and sat with us, droning over the screens. Over the next day or two, people who had been skeptical of me started to listen. The university understood that they had a problem worse than a single file being copied. Many students' accounts had been affected, and some data had leaked outside the university for a while. And that explained how a stranger could have the project before me. I recommended they check security cameras to see what exactly happened at the time my project was submitted. One of the security cameras showed a student lingering near the lab printers in the morning of the upload. Another camera across a hallway showed someone plugging in a flash drive to a public machine for a few minutes. Those clips were grainy and quick, but they were real. I watched and replayed frame by frame. My stomach clenched when I recognized the walk, the tilt of the head. It was Troy. Troy was the guy who sat beside me in lectures. He had been friendly enough, traded coffee recommendations, joked with me about late-night coding. I had never thought of him as an enemy, but now, seeing him on camera near the machines at the exact same time of the mysterious upload, everything shifted. Why would he be there? Why would he risk being so close to the server area unless he had a reason? We matched what we saw on camera with the server timestamps. The upload time matched the time Troy had been at the lab machine. When the officers finally questioned Troy, his face shifted through colors. Surprise, panic, then anger. At first, he tried to explain it away. He claimed that he had been using the lab to print slides, and that he must have seen the files somewhere else and thought they were public. The officers pressed and they showed him the timestamps and the camera footage. Finally, Troy broke. Maybe it was the quiet way of evidence, or maybe guilt had been eating him for days. He admitted that he had been jealous. He said that he had seen me work on the project and had panicked when he realized that his own submission looked so weak. So he had tried to get a copy of mine. He admitted being near the machines at the exact same time. He told them he knew exactly when to submit the project to make it look like mine was copied. Because remember when I told him the night before that I was submitting the project before midnight, so he submitted it in the afternoon, before I did. He said he didn't mean for it to blow up into a leak. He just wanted to secure a better grade. When the words came out, it felt strange. It hurt that someone I called a friend had betrayed me. The professor called me and said, "Sam, we are sorry. You did the work, you proved it, you will pass. And we were wrong to suspect you." But the story didn't end with an apology. The university took the leak seriously. They worked with the military intelligence to secure many leaked accounts that had exposed students' data for a while. They forced password resets and contacted the authorities to check where the leaked data had appeared publicly. They even asked me to join the team and help them recover what had been leaked and ruined. They gave me supervised access to a higher level tools and view-only accounts, so I could help point out what to look for. I never used anything I shouldn't. Everything I did was with the permission of the IT head and under the watch of security. When the evidence assembled, Troy faced disciplinary hearings. He lost trust among classmates, and the professor regraded the assignments, and my name was cleared. The principal's recommendation for the scholarship stood. The relief I felt was honest, and my future wasn't ruined. In fact, the government asked me to get a master's degree, and that when I get it, I'll be working with them as an undercover agent so that I can apply my programming and investigation skills to keep the country safe. What I learned was this: people make bad choices. Sometimes jealousy or fear drives them to try shortcuts. After that, I still spoke to Troy a few times. He apologized awkwardly. I accepted an apology, but not friendship. There are limits to what trust can come back from. And that's the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more.